On Insightful Inspiration, Isabelle Landreville chats with a mosaic of brilliant individuals that help shape the insights industry. We live stream episodes to LinkedIn, and you can listen on all major podcast networks. Join us, and please subscribe so you won't miss our guests' insightful inspiration and hear what drives them and how they get inspired to be successful in the insights industry and beyond. Insightful Inspiration is brought to you by Sylvester & Co., an award-winning qualitative research firm with half a century of experience.
In our last episode, we talked about how and why to trust people from the get-go. Today's episode will dive into the science behind it. Hi, I'm Isabelle Landreville. I'm President and Chief Insight Seeker at Sylvester & Co. and your host of Insightful Inspiration. Today, I'm excited to be joined by author and neuroscientist Paul Zak. His book, Trust Factor, has had tremendous impact on how I've built and led my team since reading it back in sort of 2018 or so. I'm excited to chat with him. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you so much. Hi.
I'm so happy you're joining us, actually, from warm California, right?
Well, overcast and chilly, so just like where you are.
Okay, I couldn't keep my scarf off today. I was too cold. So how about we dive right in, shall we? I'm
Sure.
excited about this. So first, let me ask you the question that's on all of our minds, building off the previous episode, which is, how does science actually back up the benefits of building trust?
Right. So I think there's a precursor question, which is, what is trust, right? So is it a feeling? Is it, so in my world, trust is a set of actions, right? So trust is when I voluntarily or intentionally allow you to control something that affects my life, my resources, my time. And so I'm making a decision to give you that control. I'm not doing that because I'm an altruist, because I think there's some benefit. You're going to reciprocate that trust and be trustworthy, right? We trust people who are trustworthy.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at the underlying brain activity when that happens, we are doing this evaluation unconsciously and rather rapidly that takes in this holistic set of information, your body language, are you smiling, the background, and also my own physiologic state. Am I comfortable here? Am I relaxed? We call that psychological safety. Do I feel relaxed around you? If not, that's a little signal, unconscious signal, like, something's going on. And so what we see is that if you appear to be trustworthy, safe, reliable, or familiar, my brain releases this neurochemical oxytocin. And the more I release of this neurochemical, the more likely I am to trust you and with more resources. And if you have the same kind of response in your brain, you will reciprocate. So the takeaway here, that was a lot of science. The takeaway is I've got to actually be comfortable in this environment in order to make a decision to trust somebody. And yet we do it all the time, right? I mean, going to restaurants, getting on airplanes, we're trusting our lives literally to people. So for social creatures, we are hypersensitive to that set of social cues that we all give off unconsciously that allow us to trust others. So the thing we do in person, which I was surprised this came back post-COVID, which is shaking hands. I remember going to meetings after the lockdowns ended, and all of a sudden people are shaking hands. You're like, hey, are we doing this now? What's happening? So that's touch. When I shake hands, I'm getting close to you. I'm getting scent, right? We have all this unconscious scent receptors that tell us about, how you're behaving towards me. I get to touch you. Are your hands dry, wet? Are you nervous? So all that is really about building trust.
And it's interesting how we start with your definition of trust. And so in my line of work, there's this big notion of making someone feel safe, even if I'm venturing into their homes or they're coming to me. This notion of within 5 minutes, I need to establish trust. I need to bond with them, build rapport, so that they will basically tell me their deepest sort of secrets. And so is there anything, you talked about touch, you talked about comfort, you talked about different things. Are there, based on your background and your expertise, is there anything that is more meaningful or something I should maybe focus on more intentionally from the get-go?
Yeah, there are a couple things. We've kind of developed this algorithm on what to do. And so the first that you said is psychological safety. You've got to be comfortable. And sometimes, we in the Western world think we want to be efficient, get everything done fast, but it's really making that person feel at home, whether you're at their home or your office, right? So, hi, how are we doing? Make eye contact. I'm Isabelle. So nice. Shake your hand, right? How nice to meet you. Have a seat, which is like a cup of coffee, a glass of water. So all of a sudden, this is how we treat our friends, right? And so from our brain perspective, when we have this neurologic response, it goes, oh, Isabelle, she's like my sister. Yeah, I'm just going to hang out with her. She's awesome, right? As opposed to, here's this weird stranger. I don't know what she's doing, right? And what we find is it's actually easier for women to do this than men, which is interesting because you're not threatening, right? You don't look scary. I'm 6'4", 200 pounds. Like I'm always going to be look weird and scary. So it's harder for me because I'm just going to come off as bigger. And even if I'm a sweet, kind person, and hopefully I am, more aggressive. So the first thing is psychological safety. The second is I want to connect to you, and that connection is driven by another neurologic state I've called immersion, which captures whether I'm attending to you. I can't connect if I'm looking over here and I'm distracted. And the second is I've got to have this kind of what we call emotional resonance. I've got to feel some kind of connection to you physiologically. That's measurable. And so this state called immersion is easily facilitated by storytelling. Now, we know this naturally, but we can do this thoughtfully. Hey, today, thank you for coming into our office. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to ask you some questions about how you experience, making this up now, television, how you watch television at home. And so we're doing this for a large TV production company, and we just want to get your opinions because we think you're pretty awesome. And so very human scale. It's not like we're collecting 5,000 observations. Well, no, that's not good storytelling. But I really want to capture what it's like for you when you sit down and watch television versus watching, say, videos online or watching streaming services. Okay, I get it. That's human scale. You told me a little story. Now, if that story has authentic emotion, has a little bit of crisis, like we're worried that people will actually stop watching television. Like maybe television's dead, and we really would like to get your opinion. Oh, okay. Now I have a little emotion in there. So that emotion says, oh, you, Isabelle, care about something, and me, the say market research target, that I'm a helper. Now you've asked me to help solve a problem that you have. Oh, that's great. Now we're connected.
Okay, fair enough. And so there's a big thing in our business, which is, yes, build rapport, tell a story and whatnot, but don't bias the research. And so there's been a lot of thinking around moderators as they sort of progress in their career to be very mindful about what you project and mindful about how you move. So you were saying earlier, women are actually in our industry, actually for a long time over-indexed female, to be quite honest. So that's not a surprise, but it's really interesting as well to say that you said, well, I'm 6 something and 200 pounds. I'm 5'10", almost 5'11". So I'm quite tall for a girl. And so it's been interesting how I've had to manage that to make sure that I wasn't sort of coming up tall. But how do you build rapport, tell a story and all of that without either flipping it and creating a bias? Can you build rapport without creating a bias?
Boy, that's a great question. Let me think about that for a second. So, when we normally tell stories to our friends and our family, we want to create a bias. We want you to enjoy my story. We want you to, inhabit my world. We call this narrative transportation. I want to transport you into this world that I'm sharing with you. From a market research perspective, right, I don't want to bias you. So I may not, so my example probably was poor earlier, right? I don't want to tell you exactly, what the goal of this research is. I just want to kind of neutrally ask you about this information. Having said that, what we can do is use an analogous kind of story. So in similar market research we queried people about how they listen to the radio, and we want to do the same thing here. So I want to do this kind of design by analogy without giving away, the kind of goals of it. So I run experiments in my lab, all the time, and we do the same thing. I don't want to kind of give away what our goals of this research are. I just want to have you naturalistically do whatever we're asking you to do.
Yeah. So and it's interesting because the opposite could be said that, in your book, The Trust Factor, there is this whole notion about openness. It's part of the acronym. There's something about transparency and openness and sort of more from a leadership standpoint, being vulnerable. Without going vulnerable, is there not a point also that telling them what the goal is, or maybe being clear on what you expect of them works from a team, but would also work for a respondent or a participant in market research?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you want to persuade that nice person who's, I mean, you're probably paying them something, but they're basically volunteering their time for, a
Mhm.
small amount of compensation to really open up to you, right? So they have to think that you are empathic, that you are willing to listen. So
Mhm.
all those things, are the core components that we need to connect to others, whether we're meeting a cute guy or girl in the bar, or taking your spouse out to dinner, or meeting a friend. So it's eye contact. It's this kind of open body language. It's relaxed. So if you feel stressed and hurried and you're behind schedule, people absorb that. So these neurologic states, when we're together, begin to synchronize. So if you, the researcher, are feeling pressured, unhappy, I don't know, hungry, what all those are stressors physiologically, that's
Mhm.
going to correspond to how the person's going to behave. So really, the market researcher has to sort of set the tone.
Yeah. How does that play out in this new hybrid world? Like, we're not meeting in person. I've never had the privilege and the pleasure of shaking your hand. How does that play out from a scientific, from a neuroscientist point of view? How does that play out online?
So we've actually done a lot of work on this pre-COVID, which was just because it was a curious question, as more and more things went online. And we find that this kind of measure of social connection I've called immersion is online about 50 to 80% of what we get in person. So it's not bad, right? This is an analogous, or an analogy would be people crying at movies. Not me, of course, Isabel, because I'm much too macho, but I've heard that occasionally people cry in movies.
I'm sure that Pampers commercial at the Olympics got you, like everybody else in the world.
Once I had kids, I'm a terrible movie crier, so it's embarrassing. Anyway, but neurologically, that's very interesting, right? If you're cognitively intact, you're aware this is a fictional story, these are professional actors, you're in a theater, and yet at the end of the movie, when the boy gets the girl, people cry, or the boy doesn't get the girl. So that's that kind of emotional contagion, that kind of connection. It can happen on a 2D world for sure. Now,
Mhm.
think about the theater. When I think about making people comfortable, we're setting the stage, right? I want some quiet. I don't want to have too many distractions. That's going to burn my neural bandwidth away from focusing on you and having you have the opportunity to elicit these emotional states that you really want to get from me. The emotions are the can I use one bad word?
Go for it.
The emotions are the give a shit measure. Like, what do you really care about? Like, so that's what, the emotional factor does. And as a good market researcher, you want to get not only the what, but really the why. Why is this important to you?
Yeah. It's really interesting. And so coming back to the initial sort of conversation that I asked you, building off. So it was interesting. So the last episode we had, and I'm sure you've tuned into it and we've talked about it, but Raj sort of took a stance and said, I just choose to trust from the get-go. And so there was this notion of what came out of it, which is it's an intentional thing that he's done throughout his career that actually led to his success. So trust begets trust up to a certain point, right? And so coming back to that, why is that? Why does trust lead to trust? Can you, if you have a trust issue, because some people have trust issues, if you have a trust issue, can you still elicit trust and still trust the same way? Or do you need to consciously, intentionally trust in order to be
Right.
trusted?
So I'll answer that from a science question. So what inhibits trusting others? One and these have a neurochemical, neuroelectrical component, but I'll talk about the behaviors. One is competition. If I set up competition, now it's you against me. I don't want to cooperate with you. I don't want to trust you, right? So this is walking in. If I walked in the market research room with a $5,000 Armani suit and a $1,000 tie, that's a dominance display, right? You don't want to do that. You want to come in, just be relaxed, right? So talking loud, too loud, right? All that stuff is a stressor. Like, I'm dominating. So you don't want to dominate. You just we want to be on the same team. We want to do this together. So the first thing is avoid competition. The second, as I mentioned, is stressors. So that could be everything from I'm hungry, I have to pee, to I had a bad day. And I think one of the things we do when we measure people's responses neurologically is assess that stress level. And so we'll actually exclude people who have just not enough neural bandwidth to really engage in an experiment. So I'm sure you do that, at least intuitively. You find people who are just not able to I don't know, participate. They're not giving you good answers. They're antsy. They're moving around. They're, like, hey, maybe this isn't the right day for us to chat
Mhm.
with you. Maybe we can do it some other day. So really kind of excluding those individuals. And then lastly, we have these personality traits. And so we have some individuals who are super neurotic or who are anxious, and they're just not going to connect as well. So they're kind of looking for provocations. They're looking for someone to be aggressive. And I think this is a good question for you, for me, which is, we sort of want to know about those personality types and how they
Mhm.
interact with different products and brands. Other hand, they can, generate another bias, which is they're just going to be cranky and unhappy people in general, because that's kind of the world that they genetically got inherited for whatever reason. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And actually, so I've been doing this for about I've been doing this for 20 years. Let's just put it out there. And so I think I've done over the years, I think I've built something. I've been doing things intuitively. So I think let me answer your question, because these are just things out of experience. And then I'd love to see if you could, like, if there's science behind it, because then maybe I can sort of do it with more intention, or maybe more strategically than I've been doing it. So I think there's two things. So I think that when you do like a focus group in person, or in your someone's home or something, I do think you have more tools, to be quite honest. So I do think that being in the moment next to them, you do have the ability to touch people. And I'm not saying it's weird, but I've seen myself like rub someone, like just in a focus group, someone. So the person on your left, usually, if you do a small focus groups, is the person that needs to be sheltered a bit. I
Hmm.
found in my experience. So that's the not the teacher's pet, but someone that's a bit sort of the person who wants to be forgotten is on your right in the middle. So if you've got 3 and 3. So there's like types like that, which are really interesting. And I like actually I've seen myself rub someone's back as I was talking to the group.
Wow.
I've seen myself, and just intuitively, and I know I've done it successfully, I've seen myself also walk around the room, kneel. I told you I'm very tall, so the table can even seem like small on me, like it hits me at below the hip. So I can sit on the table, I can kneel, I can crouch. If someone actually needs to step out of the room, I might actually take their chair for a while. And so it changes the dynamic, it changes the power structure a bit, and that helps. Doing even things with like I also setting the stage up to a certain point in person. Like I've done a lot of things where new mothers with their babies, and I said, do you have someone that's part of your family, either your mother, your mother-in-law, even your husband, that you would actually like to be present while I'm there?
Hmm.
And so it creates that sense of safety. Everybody's at ease. There's no stranger in the house with this newborn that I'm kind of, and these were real newborns, like less than 3 months or something, 3 months in. So there is this notion of, so I think it's also recognizing what you're asking people to do. Um, and yeah, I've broken a fist fight in a focus group.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's different things. So yeah, powering it up versus, powering it down, I think is interesting. But I think it's this notion that in person, there's this ability to touch people, like literally just, and then you change the mood more easily. I think online, I have to use so many more words. And tone is not quite the same, and not everybody has the same Partridge Family makeup. It's not as easy, I feel. It comes more naturally in person for some reason.
For sure. So I'm kind of famous for hugging people. This came about because we showed that touch induces the brain release
Mhm.
oxytocin. So who do you hug? People that you like, My concern, though, I mean, I like the touching. I do experiments of very invasive experiments and blood draws, and so I'm touching people all the time. So I'm just totally used to it. But do you worry that if you rub that person's shoulder, they're going to induce a bias and give you an answer that they think you want because you're such a kind, wonderful person? They want to please you.
I think you have, and that's where I was going. I think you have to do it mindfully and purposefully. You can't just go about and do it. You have to consciously decide to do it. I think there's also, after a while, you actually, if you get a good sense of sharing the caring up to a certain point. Not everybody wants to be acknowledged and cared for the same way in a focus group. And I think you can, over time, you can pick up on that. And so it is spreading the love up to a certain point. And I think if you do it purposefully and you do it for a very, it wasn't an hour, it's a spark. Sometimes it's just a touch. It's not rubbing someone's back for an hour. It's just going, are you good? Do you need a minute? It's just acknowledging the fact that, there might be a stressor, as you were saying, using your word, that they need something, and we're just going to go, okay. The opposite aspect can also happen, which is this notion of sometimes one person is dragging the group down. And so there's this notion that you need to address that, because people are then questioning your leadership up to a certain point. Is there any science that can actually, you're going to lose everybody's trust if you don't address? So do you have any science to back that up? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. So I think there's kind of two, axes there in this 2x2 graph we're talking about. One is that connection, trust, oxytocin. So we're all comfortable. We're all friends here. This is going to be interesting and hopefully fun. And we're having a great time. And then the second is we have this disruptive person, right? And so that is when, you as the leader of that group or your team, you have to take charge, right? Because if they're disruptive, the fist fight offline, you can tell me more about how that happened, but how people kind of get in their faces. And if you don't control that, then you lose that leadership capacity. So then that's the sort of competitive testosterone. Hey, you know what? This is not working. You got to go, or you got to take a break. I was in an experiment once. I'll just mention university, UCLA, and years ago, and it's the kind of thing where we needed pairs of people. So we recruit, 20 people, and it was like 21. And so the last person in, we didn't get a 22 person. So I said, hey, thanks for showing up. You're here for 5 minutes. I can give you $10 to just walk away, sign up for another session experiment. Anyway, start running the experiment. This involves blood draws. I mean, it's a complicated experiment.
Yep.
This guy leaves and then comes, the lab administrator goes, hey, this guy wants more money. I'm like, I'm not obligated to give him anything. I was just being nice. I'm like, it's a beautiful day. This guy's disrupting my experiment. So same thing. So then you have a choice to make, right? I can have a long conversation, but I got stuff going on. I'm super busy. I got a team of people. And I said, look, you got two choices. One, I'm going to grab you by the neck and throw you on your ass. Or number two, you take that $10, sit outside, watch the cute girls walk by, and enjoy your day in at UCLA. So you got to decide in the next 2 seconds, because I'm about to toss you out. Now, that maybe wasn't appropriate. I was probably kind of stressed at the time, but that's a sense in which it's my show. I'm in control. If you can't play nice with us, you got to go bye-bye.
Yeah, I think you
almost
have
never happens. I mean, I remember that because of the 5,000 people I've tested in experiments. That's happened maybe twice.
Yeah, and it's interesting how you have to, and that's why I was going back to, how do you instill trust like that instantly? Because, and what's the science behind it? Because moments like that can happen in a split second, and you're faced with it. And it's interesting because sometimes if you didn't see it coming, so I think a big part of my job is to see it coming and sort of make sure it doesn't unravel. Because after 20 years of doing this, it's really interesting how I don't know if I think I am a moderator. Like, I am moderator versus it's what I do. Right. Because I do think that now, because I have to know what my spontaneous reactions will be. Because if I don't see it coming, I have to make sure I can control my spontaneous reaction to make sure I have the right one and not derail the entire thing, and make sure, because I'm not fulfilling my own curiosity. I'm not flipping the bill. It's not my research.
Right.
I'm just doing it. So I think there's also something about that split second, to your point. Was it the right call? Was it not? And you do have to know. So I think actively listening and sort of making sure you can sort of see it coming.
And there are people with oppositional personalities who just want to, stir up the pot and be bothersome, and that's their personality. And I think those people we have to sort of move out, because one-on-one, maybe you can, take them in the path you want to, but in a group, they're going to be really disruptive. And they're not that common. And most people, want to get along. I'm wondering if your role as have adopted a moderator role has affected your personal life, positive or negative, or both.
I think you'd have to ask my husband. But I do know that now some of my friends who have, like, on special occasions that are bigger occasions, want to mix their groups of friends that they usually keep siloed. They usually go, so you'll make sure everybody gets along, right? I'm like, sure, I can send you a bill.
Your superpower. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's this notion of, I do think there's this notion of, though, that good or bad, maybe not good or bad, I get really comfortable with people really, really fast.
Mhm.
And so good or bad. So if I am in a very formal setting, which doesn't happen as much as it used to, because it's not, I don't think that's where our life is, where society is going anyways. So I think that's a safer bet in my mind. But yeah, sometimes I do speak to whomever, just like I spoke to them yesterday and they're a really good friend, which can get me in trouble once in a while.
So for listeners, let's kind of do just a little bit on the science.
Yeah.
So, our brains are building models of the world. We're trying to adapt to our environment, and our social environment definitely matters. I spend a lot of time working with psychiatric patients whose brains are not able to do that, fit in properly. But we all have some of those traits. Again, tired, hungry, haven't slept well, the dog died, your spouse yelled at you. That's just taking neural bandwidth away from cooperation, trust, engaging with others in the appropriate way. So what we find in the data is about 95% of people have this neurologic ability to trust, to cooperate most of the time. So that 5%, about half those are people having really bad days. They're just having a bad day and they're going to be totally fine tomorrow. And we've all had that, right? Where you have to go into the office or to your spouse and go, man, that was kind of a jerk yesterday. I was having a bad day and I think I took it out on you. I'm really sorry. We all understand that. Then about 2% of that, of that 5%, a little less than half of those are people who have really pathological personality traits, everything from clinical psychopaths to oppositional personalities. And for those individuals, generally, you just want to exclude them, right? They're not going to play nice. They're going to take advantage of the group. They want attention. But it's 2% of the population. It's not bad. And if you can screen them a little before. So for most of us, when we interact with even our loved ones, and they're just behaving oddly in like a kind of jerky way, generally it's good people having a bad day. So if you kind of think of that tolerance, and this is what I learned from spending so much time with psychiatric patients, these are people who really have brain disorders, but they're not terrible people. Their brain's working differently. And that's just true for all of us.
Yeah. And so let me ask you, when you want to instill trust and sort of, do you have to, so you have to send out trust, right? Do you necessarily have to trust in order to get trust back? Is that the only way to get it done?
That's a great question. The easiest way is to appear trustworthy, right? So again, I'm making eye contact. I'm going to shake hands or maybe touch you on the shoulder, all those things you did. I gave a talk yesterday to a healthcare group. I'm like, here's the top 10 things I want my doctor to do with me. Introduce himself or herself, make eye contact. Don't make me wait for an hour. My time's as valuable as yours. Don't make me sit in a cold room with a tiny little gown which I'm naked in. I mean, on and on and on. Treat me like a freaking customer, not like, a bother, which is the way you normally feel. So I think it's the same thing. If you're happy to see that person, oh, Mrs. Smith, I'm so happy to meet you. Wow, it's great. Thanks for participating in our study. It's going to be fun. We're going to spend about half an hour together. So I'm just setting the stage. I'm telling a little bit of a story. So we've done about 30 of these. You're like number 31. So it's going to be really easy for you to do. So I'm just making you feel really comfortable. As you said, Isabelle, much easier in person because I'm getting all that body language. And I said earlier, smells and, all those things that we are not aware of. But yeah, make eye contact. I mean, we're doing this right now, right? I'm looking at you. I mean, you can't really tell, but I'm looking at you in the eye. You're looking at me in the eye. It feels comfortable. If I was looking over here talking to you, it would be super weird, right? That's just, or looking down. You know the joke about the how you can tell if an engineer is an extrovert?
Tell me.
Because he looks at your shoes. So, right. So even though I'm an introvert, but even as an introvert, I'm not shy. I'll hang out with anybody and talk to them. I just do it less than extroverts do, right? So right?
And
Pretend to be an extrovert.
that's interesting because Raj is an introvert. So our guest on the last episode, you just mentioned you're an introvert. There's something about active listening as well. Like we had a comment from one of our listeners who said, doesn't eye contact, actively listening, that sort of communicates trust and makes you trustworthy. And in your book, you do say practice silence, like this notion of listen more than you talk. Do introverts just naturally like instill more trust?
We don't find that. We find that it's a good question. We find that individuals who are more agreeable by
Mhm.
personality and more empathic are seen as more trustworthy and neurologically induce a stronger response in people they're interacting with. So these are kind of the super warm people who just have lots of friends. They just love to be around other humans. They're not always extroverts. So I always say, like, I play an extrovert on TV. I was spoken at an event in LA Saturday night. I don't know, 60, 65 people, of whom I knew two. And, I had to give a little talk, and then everyone wants to talk to you. And it's wonderful. And I said, stay up to midnight, and I had a great time. And, and then I, curled up in a ball and, slept because I was exhausted.
Yeah.
But no problem. I can certainly do that. Right. So introverts can do it. I do tend to listen more than I talk. You can't tell that today because I'm talking nonstop. But, introverts are much more focused on factors that they care about, where extroverts will talk about kind of anything. And there's positive and negatives to that. So in terms of building trust, if I want to connect to you neurologically and I'm talking about something that you really care about, I call this relevance. If that concept is relevant to you, your brain actually directs the areas that process emotion to put more processing power into this experience. So if I'm showing you an ad for, I don't know, my prop for mints,
Yeah.
and you don't like mints, I'm telling you, these are the world's best mints, and I love them, and you don't care. But if I give you an ad, I'm looking for another prop now about my AirPods and how much great, and you're like, I've been thinking about buying AirPods. Okay, relevant. So
Yeah.
if you can make that conversation relevant to the individual, they're going to put more processing power in, which means you can elicit more of an emotional response.
I think that's brilliant because I'm thinking back to so in my line of work, you also do, when you do groups for, I don't know, I have a prop next to me. I have Crispers next to me, which is a Canadian brand. So you probably don't have them in the States. But so you will, if you do brand stuff, you'll do brand lovers, occasional users, and then maybe lapse users. People are moving away with the intent of, why have you moved away? Have you replaced us? Have we done something wrong? It's like a relationship, right? But just from a brand's perspective. And it's really interesting how the discussion guide, in my experience, I've always changed the discussion guide, because a brand lover will automatically just be super engaged in the conversation, will give you so much. Whereas the person who's actually moved away potentially, or is more a lapsed user, has a different connection to the brand. If you want to unpack that, you have to use a different toolbox, a tool set, different activities, different questions, because the science just told me why.
Yeah. And you said something so brilliant, which I want to expand on, which is you have understood intuitively that our relationship with brands is very much like a relationship with another human. And we find that neurologically. We published research showing that if we turn on this attachment mechanism in the brain pharmacologically, that people not only will say they like the brand more, they're willing to pay more to buy it. They think it's more competent, right? So this same pathway that makes us fall in love with people makes us fall in love with brands, right? So I have all this Apple schmutz, around me. I'm in the Apple ecosystem. Apple would have to do some really, really evil stuff for me to get out of that ecosystem, because I'm a hardcore Apple guy. It always has worked great for me. It all integrates without me thinking about it. So think of the same thing for specific brands. Again, whatever these, mints are on my desk, right? If this is something that I consume all the time and I really like them and all that, this brand should be reaching out to me, right? I can be a brand ambassador for them. So for people in the branding world, these brand lovers, as you've called them, Isabelle, they will work to spread the word about that brand. And I think they're just an underutilized, powerful leverage marketing tool, right? Give them some little tchotchke,
Yeah.
some little something, and they will tell the world about it. So activate these individuals. They want to help you. So I'm
Yeah.
outside Los Angeles. As you probably know, all the major studios and the production companies have fandom departments. They
Hmm.
actively engage those fans. So when you find those brand lovers, not only are they interesting for market research, but they really want to help sell the brand.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's definitely something interesting in this notion of looking at the relationship people would have with brands and companies, and even teams as just a one-on-one conversation, a very human sort of conversation, very human kind of relationship with all the steps probably. Like if you stop sending flowers, if I can use that proxy, I mean, you stop sending flowers. And so, I think there's a bit of that too. And interestingly, if we kind of go back, we've talked about brands, we talk about, moderating and whatnot, and sort of build connection and using trust there. I just want to switch a bit to away from the focus group to a team. How do you, and ask you, how do you practically build a high trust culture? I think a culture is more so you have more time with them, you spend more time, you do something different than instilling trust with a respondent or a participant or even in a focus group. So, how do you actually, since you have more time, what other
Mhm.
tools do you have? How do you practically do that?
For sure. And often we spend more time with our work colleagues than we do with our families, right? So we really, they sort of become, quasi families. Um, the first is, which may kind of shock people, is I don't want the people who work with me, not for me, with me. They're volunteers. They're choosing to do this. I don't want them to be happy. What? They should be focused. They should have a moderate amount of stress. So performance and cognition and memory are better in this kind of inverted U curve when I have a focus. I need to have goals, challenges, right? They should be on. I do want them to be satisfied. Oh, yeah, we did something hard this week or this month, right? We had this really tough goal. We recruited all these people. We got that report done. Client's super happy. So the goal isn't happiness. It turns out that it's satisfaction with your job that induces your happiness. It's not happy people are more productive. It's that productive people are more happy. So first is do that. Number one. Number two, if you're the leader, you've got to be in the trenches, right? If you're just up on high in your office, not talking to anybody and dictating to individuals, they're volunteers. They can go work for somebody else. And Isabelle, you've noticed there's no more babies, right? We have an aging population everywhere except for Africa, and they'll start aging soon. So we got to keep the people working for us working for us. So give them challenges, give them a chance to grow. But in my line of work where we're doing fairly invasive stuff, separating out blood products, I'll take that job.
Mm.
Messy, biohazard, sign me up. So they gotta see me out there doing that hard work or recruiting people on the street or whatever weird stuff we're doing. And then lastly, you've got to follow through to be trustworthy, right? If you say something, you got to follow through on it. If you don't, own it. Hey, you know what? I promise you guys we'd be off on Saturday, but we're not missing we haven't hit our goal on recruiting, and we're gonna have to work on Saturday. I'm really sorry, but I need you to kick in on this Saturday. I'll pay you overtime, but we got to get this thing done by Monday, or we are in trouble. Like that's what a team does, right? That's what a family does. It was to kind of pull together.
Yeah.
So that kind of challenges. I think it's difficult when you have long-term employees to really think about helping them grow professionally, but if they're not growing professionally, they're going to get frustrated. Also, this work-life integration thing, as we do more hybrid work or work on the road, it's really important to think about whether they're growing personally as well. Am I sucking them out so much that they're burnt out and now their spouse is unhappy or their kids are not doing well? So as you know from the book, I created what I call the whole person review. Once a year, let's talk about forward-looking stuff, backward-looking stuff. I should be giving you feedback all the time as a leader. Let's sit down and talk about where you want to go professionally, where you want to go personally. What do you love to do outside of work? Do you have time to do that? Do you hike? Do you sail? So if people don't have this, moderate amount of balance in their life, they're just working 80 hours a week or whatever,
Hmm.
they're going to quit
Well,
eventually.
in your experience and expertise, can you be as satisfied with your job or at work if you don't grow professionally as much as you grow personally? But it's still because of your job that actually you can grow personally that way.
Yeah, it's a great question. If you love what you do, there are people that do not need or want to grow professionally. So I advised a very large pharmacy benefits manager in the U.S.
Mhm.
Just to suppress the name, so I probably signed something. And they have a call center, so people who get, it's the U.S., right? So it's fractured health insurance system, and got to get the insurance to pay for the drugs, and so there's a lady who was on the phones for like 15 years, and they kept on trying to promote her to be a supervisor, and she didn't want to. And so as part of the work I did with them, I interviewed her, and she goes, I love helping people every day. If I'm a supervisor, I'm just organizing the humans, and I know them all, and they're all friends or whatever. But she's like, every day I go home at 5 o'clock with zero stress, and I know that I made someone's life better. Oh, awesome. Let her keep doing that. She digs it, right? Now she's got a good personal life. She was off work at 5:05. She was gone. She's ready to go, and it couldn't be a sweeter person. So again, I think there are individuals who don't have to have that professional growth, and
Mhm.
others who do want it. So if you look at young people, younger employees really want to have a chance to grow professionally, and their personal life may be a little more unstable than say us older people.
Yeah, fair. And you use work-life integration versus work-life balance. Do you separate both?
Yeah, I don't think there is any balance. I think in the world we're in which many people are working in the gig economy, you know, you run a business, you have 5 jobs for sure. I've got 3 solid jobs that
Yeah.
pay me different things. And so I think, having that balance. So I work 7 days a week, not because I have to, because I love it. I get so much value from that. And I may switch what I'm working on, but it's just enjoyable. I may not work 8-hour days on Saturday and Sunday, but I'll generally work 4 or 5 or 6 hours because I got stuff that is so valuable to me internally, and I'm lucky to have a job that lets me do that. So I
Mhm.
think we want to be really flexible and how people work. Also, timing, where people have different chronotypes. We have programmers that work for me that work all through the night. I don't know why programmers love to program at night, but most of them seem to.
Yeah.
So I wake up at 6, and I got a nice report from these guys that are working all night. Awesome, we're up to speed.
Mhm.
I don't need them to come to our daily huddle as long as they're hitting their milestones and work's getting done. Sometimes I got to call them. Hey, you can't go to sleep yet. I got to talk to you. Or, we have a problem here. So I really don't care as long as you get the work done. So I think we really want to accommodate everybody.
Yeah, it really boils down to getting the work down and done and making that challenge, getting through that challenge and sort of getting it done, right?
Yeah, and giving people the autonomy and how they do that. So I just want to
Mhm.
get the work done, and how you do it. I really want you to have agency to pivot around. And because if someone's on the ground and I'm not, they've got to make a decision. So concrete example, we were doing a market research study in Florida, and if you run a company, Isabel, the cost of everything, every paperclip. I know the cost of everything. And anyway, we were collecting brain activity, but also videotaping people,
Mhm.
and the room was very dark that we rented. And so this colleague of mine, Beth, if Beth is listening, she can hear this. Beth went to Target, bought a light, used that light, kept the packaging, and 2 days later returned it to Target and got the $30 back. God bless her. I love her so much. Beth, thank you.
You've
So,
gotten a special thank you, a special letter, a special email.
right, so, she's thinking like an owner. She's thinking,
Yeah.
hey, we have limited resources. We have a contract here.
Mhm.
Let's not waste those resources. We can be careful with them because it all benefits the larger organization, right? Which is her included in that. So I think when you give people autonomy, she didn't ask me, she just did it. And if she needed to buy something, buy it. If you need that, just buy it. But
Mhm.
thinking like an owner, I think is very important. And if
Mhm.
I'm micromanaging you, you're not going to think like an owner.
No, and I'm probably not gonna get the best out of you if I micromanage you because I'm dictating versus tapping into your expertise and your brainwave and your sort of creativity.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I like to say, train extensively and then delegate generously, right? So
Mm.
once you're trained, do your thing, and that means people are going to make mistakes. But the mistakes that are benefits, we call those innovations. The negative mistakes, those are failures. But we should also learn from that. So we tell kids, "Oh yeah, honey, it's okay. You can make a mistake, and that's." But as an adult, you don't get to make mistakes. No, we all make mistakes, and as long as they're not catastrophic, then we'll learn from them.
Yeah, fair enough. And so let me ask you this. If you are in a point where you've successfully sort of built and sustained a high trust culture within your team, how do you go about successfully integrating a new member?
Mm.
Because it's the one person out. let me add a challenge to you to make sure you focus. Is this notion of maybe this person comes from an organization that isn't in the habit of trusting from the get-go and not top performing, not top trusting.
So in fact, if we look at organizational trust by job tenure, it has a sort of a U curve. That is, people have just hired, they're excited, they're like, oh, I love these guys. And then it's the kind of the 5 to 8 year range where you've seen all the skeletons, you've been there, you're doing the job okay. And then I think on the other side of that, 10 years beyond, you have sort of selection bias. The people who really love this job and are good at it, they just stay in that organization. So it's, I think, really having the infection of the people who have been there, the long tenure people and those young people, integrate them in. I believe in mentoring. We often will pair people together. So I think if you're just thrown in by yourself, sink or swim. I mean, I know companies that do that, and a lot of them believe that you should find your own way. This is very, kind of Elon Musk kind of approach. Just figure it out, and if you can survive here, then you'll be great. But as a social neuroscientist, right, I believe in, let's use all of those social skills. And if you have people that really have a passion, this is a mission for them and not a job, that'll infect that new person almost always, and they'll get on board and go, oh yeah, we have a mission to improve people's lives. And ultimately, all businesses, all organizations are designed to improve people's lives. So once we understand that mission and we can embrace that, people work much, much harder for a mission than for a paycheck.
Yeah, it's actually our mission. Our mission statement is actually to enhance the quality of life of all stakeholders, from employees to clients to team members to even participants. Or yeah, it's carrying throughout 360 degree. It's interesting. So I think we could do this for another 5 hours. I think we might have to do another episode. I've enjoyed this thoroughly. So many insights, great discussion. I do think we have a curfew with Chris. And so I do want us to sort of stay on topic and do that. So as you know, I am bilingual, bicultural. So there's always a French twist when it comes to me. And so I think we shared these with you before. So these 4 questions, I like to wrap up every episode with these 4 questions. They are inspired by the French series Bouillon de Culture de Bernard Pivot. You probably know them from the Actors Studio.
Yes.
Yeah. So I will not ask you your favorite swear word. I'm very sorry about that.
That's okay.
But I will ask you the 4 following ones. So tell me, what profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I would like to be a landscape architect.
Why is that? What is it about that that's
out in nature, creating beautiful things that are growing, and just having someone giving you lots of land and say, make it gorgeous. Like, that would be so fun. And then get your hands dirty every day. I don't know. I would love that.
Excellent. Excellent. Number 2, what is your favorite word?
Unquestionably, it's the word yes.
What emotion does yes elicit when you hear it, when you say it?
We get to play ball. Like, yes, another human agreeing to do something with me. Not that you agree with me. Like, let's do some cool stuff now. Like, this is exciting. And
is it do you like it more when you hear it or when you say it?
Oh, when I hear it, for sure. Yeah. But I also, my second favorite word is no, I disagree. Right? I want people to disagree with me. I learned something. If I'm wrong, I learned something. I don't want you to agree with me. But yes to means we're going to do something, not that I'm the most awesome person ever. I could care less about that.
Yeah. Excellent. What is your least favorite word?
It's going to be no. Yeah. So, but not no, no, I don't want to do this thing. Like, let's, I'm a very active person. I want to just do stuff. I want to, I'm a take no prisoners person. Like, let's storm the walls. Let's burn the ships and make this thing happen. So if you want to be in a journey with me, I love that.
Yeah. You've got 2 no's. No is your second favorite word, and then no. So different meanings.
Yeah, exactly right. That's the differential of English, right? Which is no, like, I don't think this is a good idea. Awesome. Let's have that discussion. And no meaning, no, I'm not going to be on this crazy journey with you. So I've had the privilege of having, people I've worked with for 20, 25 years, probably like you, who I absolutely love. We have been through the trenches, traveled, stress, lack of sleep, and they just perform. They're good people. That's a yes. That's, But I disagreed with some of these people on 100 different things, and we've never raised our voice with each other.
But disagreement doesn't mean, and I'm in Quebec, and therefore there's ebullience that comes with it and a bit of passion and maybe a lot of this, but it's the French Latin rooted sort of thing. But I think saying no and being challenged also intellectually sort of is stimulating. And doesn't that build engagement? Does that build trust and engagement?
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, I that's why I said I'm a big believer in failure, right? So
Mhm.
if we can discuss something that we're passionate about and bring evidence to that debate, I love to be wrong, right? Wrong means I've learned something. We see this in experiments all the time. You probably see it in your work as well, where our kind of simple or even simplistic hypotheses or guess about what's going to happen, the humans are totally different. The brain's working differently. And you look at the data and you go, oh, this is interesting, right? This
Mhm.
now we have to understand what that data is telling us. I love those discussions.
Yeah. For a question, what is the best thing a mentor has told you that has stayed with you?
So this may shock you, but this was in an undergraduate finance course in which the professor said, always pay yourself first.
Mhm.
By that he meant because of the magic of compounding, you can not pay your electricity bill for a couple of months. The company, will keep your power on, but always make sure you're investing in your future. This is the same thing as putting on your oxygen mask before you help somebody else. If you're not physically healthy, emotionally healthy, spiritually healthy, you cannot be of service to the people you work with, to your
Mhm.
family. So it really means you've got to take care of yourself first so that you can take care of other people. So it sounds like it's a selfish thing, but it really means if I'm going to be of service, I've got to be really strong and ready to do that service in
Mhm.
any way that people need me.
Yeah. And it's interesting because it loops back to when before we started, we were chit-chatting and we said you have to be okay with yourself. You have to be having a good day, not only to be a great participant, but also to be a great empathy builder because you can't be outward directed. You can't go towards someone. You can't build trust. You can't build empathy if your house is in order because your focus is going to be inward, right?
For sure. It's all about other people. So I think actually also it's easy to do that when you get older. I think when you're in your teens and 20s, and I
Yeah.
can tell you neurologically, but who cares? You get to be very kind of self-absorbed, taking selfies everywhere. And then once you're in your 30s and later, you go, man, I love these people around me. I'll do anything for them. So
Mm,
what I try to do, Isabella, is I try to end every conversation with the word service. I'm going to do that with you. What a
mm.
pleasure and a privilege to spend time with you. I want to be of service to you in the future. Anytime there's anything you need, please reach out and I'm happy to provide it.
Well, I will extend the compliment and the generosity. Thank you so much. It was a
Thank you.
really great conversation. Thanks again. And thank you for everyone for tuning in. If you've enjoyed it, please share it with your networks, and I'll be back soon with the next episode. Subscribe now so you won't miss it, and we'll see you then. Have a nice day.